The rise of the Draxian Empire. The stars hung like diamonds against the velvet darkness of space, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama that would reshape the galaxy forever. In the gleaming capital city of Draxos Prime, Emperor Draxus the Bold stood before the ancient throne of stars, his ceremonial armor reflecting the soft light of 1,000 crystalline chandeliers. The death of his father, Emperor Vexeros the Wise, had thrust him into power at a crucial moment in their civilization's history. "The time has come," Draxus declared to his assembled war council, his voice carrying the weight of generations of imperial authority. "Our ancestors built this empire from nothing, and now we shall extend our reach beyond the known frontiers." Grand Admiral Thexus, a veteran of countless campaigns, stepped forward. His cybernetically enhanced eyes glowed with a subtle blue light as he activated the holographic display at the center of the war room. "My Emperor, our initial surveys of the neighboring sectors show minimal resistance. The Centauri scholars have already expressed interest in peaceful integration." But Draxus wasn't interested in peaceful integration. His father's diplomatic approach had maintained stability, but it hadn't brought glory to the empire. The young emperor's fingers traced the edge of his ceremonial sword, a weapon that hadn't tasted blood in 3 generations. That was about to change. The campaign began with surgical precision. The Draxian fleet, resplendent in their crimson and gold livery, descended upon the Centauri systems. The scholars, for all their wisdom, had no defense against the overwhelming might of the Empire's newest warships. Within weeks, their crystal cities submitted to Draxian rule. The conquest of the Andromedans proved more challenging. Their ancient archives contained secrets of weapons technology that even the Draxians hadn't mastered. But what they possessed in knowledge, they lacked in numbers. When the Draxian armada appeared in their skies, darkening their twin suns, the outcome was inevitable. The warriors of Ura Major provided the first real test of Draxian military might. Their battle cruisers, though fewer in number, were piloted by crews who had been bred for combat since birth. The space above their homeworld became a graveyard of ships from both sides, but in the end, superior numbers and technology prevailed. As news of each victory reached Draxos Prime, the Empire's citizens celebrated in the streets. They didn't see the cost of these triumphs, the worlds reduced to ash, the civilizations forced to abandon millennia of culture and tradition. Emperor Draxus was celebrated as a military genius, his name spoken with the same reverence as the legendary conquerors of old. But in the darkness between the stars, something stirred. The Lumians, watching from their hidden outposts in the Triangulum sector, saw a pattern emerging. They had survived countless empires by adapting, by refusing to play by the conventional rules of warfare. As they monitored the Draxian advance, they began preparing for a conflict unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The first indication that the Lumians would be different came during a routine conquest of a mining colony in the Outer Rim. The Draxian assault force, expecting the usual token resistance, found only empty habitats and inactive machinery. As they began securing the facility, their sensors detected a massive energy surge. The entire colony had been rigged with experimental quantum charges, taking out 3 capital ships and thousands of troops in an instant. This was not how warfare was conducted in the civilized galaxy. The Lumians were supposed to arrange their ships in proper formation, exchange fire at acceptable ranges, and submit when clearly outmatched. Instead, they employed tactics that the proud Draxian military considered dishonorable: cloaked ships striking from nowhere, computer viruses that turned the Empire's own weapons against them, and psychological warfare that shattered the morale of occupation forces. Admiral Thexus, who had overseen the conquest of a dozen systems, found himself outmaneuvered by an enemy he couldn't even see. "They're cowards," he declared during a particularly heated war council meeting. "They refuse to face us in honorable combat." But Emperor Draxus, watching his carefully planned campaign grind to a halt, recognized something else in the Lumian resistance: innovation born of necessity. The smaller species had developed these tactics because they had no hope of winning a conventional war. It was adaptation in its purest form, and despite himself, the Emperor felt a grudging respect for their ingenuity. The War Council demanded ever-increasing resources be devoted to developing countermeasures. New sensor arrays were designed to detect cloaked ships. AI systems were hardened against cyber attacks. The proud crimson and gold of Draxian warships was replaced with stealth coatings, a concession that sparked protests from traditionalists within the military. But the Lumians had forced the Empire to change in more fundamental ways. The rigid hierarchy that had served them well in conventional warfare proved too slow to respond to lightning raids and guerrilla tactics. Young officers who showed adaptability were promoted over veterans who clung to traditional methods. The Empire that had conquered through overwhelming force was learning, painfully, that sometimes the smallest opponent could prove the most dangerous. As the conflict spread, other species watched with growing interest. The Lumian resistance proved that the Draxian Empire wasn't invincible. Hidden transmissions began passing between worlds, carrying tactical data and intelligence about Draxian vulnerabilities. What had begun as a simple campaign of conquest was evolving into something far more complex, a fight for the very soul of the galaxy. In the quieter moments between battles, Emperor Draxus found himself studying historical records of extinct civilizations. Every great empire had faced its crucial test, a moment that either strengthened it or marked the beginning of its decline. As reports of yet another failed offensive reached his throne room, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Lumians were not that test. They were merely the harbinger of something far more significant. On the edges of known space, beyond the reach of even the most advanced Draxian sensors, humanity was about to make its presence known to the galaxy. They would not arrive as conquerors or subjects, but as something entirely new, a species that had survived its own near-extinction events, that had learned to turn its greatest weaknesses into strengths. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The Draxian Empire, master of 1,000 worlds, was about to encounter a force it couldn't intimidate, couldn't outmaneuver, and couldn't understand. The age of simple conquest was ending, and a new era of warfare was about to begin. The Lumian Resistance. In the shadowy corridors of the Lumian High Command, Supreme Commander Lyra she studied the holographic display of known space with eyes that had evolved to see beyond the visible spectrum. The Draxian advance had been halted at key strategic points, but the cost had been enormous. Entire Lumian colonies had gone dark, their populations evacuated to hidden sanctuaries deep within the Triangulum sector. "Show me the latest simulation," she commanded, her voice carrying the melodic undertones characteristic of her species. The AI complied, projecting a complex web of probability streams that represented possible futures for their civilization. The Lumians had survived for millennia by understanding one fundamental truth: adaptation was not just about technology or tactics, it was about embracing change at the deepest level. Their bodies could alter their cellular structure to survive in hostile environments. Their minds could form temporary collective consciousnesses to solve complex problems. They were evolution made manifest, and now they faced their greatest challenge. Deep within their hidden shipyards, a new class of vessel was taking shape. Traditional Draxian doctrine relied on massive capital ships that could devastate entire continents. The Lumian response was to go smaller, not larger. Their new Ghost-class ships were barely large enough for a crew of 3, but they incorporated technology that even the Empire's best scientists couldn't comprehend. "The quantum entanglement drive is ready for testing," reported Chief Engineer Ven, his skin shifting to match the metallic walls of the research facility. "If it works as designed, we'll be able to bypass their blockades completely." The technology was revolutionary. By creating localized pockets of quantum-entangled space, the Lumian ships could effectively teleport short distances. It wasn't true faster-than-light travel, but in combat, the ability to instantly change position could mean the difference between survival and destruction. But the Lumians weren't fighting just to survive. They had seen the pattern of history repeat itself too many times: empires rise, expand, and eventually collapse under their own weight. The Draxians were just the latest in a long line of species who believed they could impose order on a chaotic galaxy. Supreme Commander, she had a different vision. The intelligence networks she had carefully cultivated brought reports of other species watching the conflict with growing interest. The Centauri scholars, officially subjects of the Empire, were secretly preserving their knowledge in hidden archives. The warriors of Ura Major, though defeated, maintained their fighting spirit. Even the Andromedans, for all their supposed submission, were developing new technologies in secret. Begin Operation Shadowlight, she commanded during a secure meeting of the Lumian War Council. The plan was audacious. Instead of simply resisting Draxian expansion, they would work to unite the conquered peoples into a hidden network of resistance. The first phase involved deploying specially modified communication probes throughout occupied space. These devices, no larger than a human hand, could create secure quantum channels that the Empire's best sensors couldn't detect. Through these channels, the subjugated species began sharing information, resources, and hope. But the Lumians' greatest advantage was their ability to think differently about the nature of warfare itself. While the Draxians saw space as a three-dimensional battlefield to be dominated, the Lumians understood it was really a complex web of relationships, gravitational, electromagnetic, and quantum. They didn't need to control territory in the traditional sense, they just needed to influence the flow of energy and information. Their hit-and-run tactics evolved into something more sophisticated. Instead of simply attacking Draxian ships, they began manipulating the fundamental forces of spacetime around them. Gravity wells appeared where none should exist, causing massive capital ships to veer off course. Quantum fluctuations disrupted weapon systems at crucial moments. The Empire's mighty warships found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to bend reality itself. The psychological impact was even more significant. Draxian crews, trained to face enemies they could see and understand, began to crack under the strain of fighting shadows. Discipline broke down. Ships refused to leave port without extensive escort. The Empire's momentum, built on centuries of conventional military doctrine, began to falter. But the Lumians knew they were racing against time. Every tactical victory came at a cost in resources they couldn't easily replace. The Empire's industrial capacity was vast, and even with their advanced technology, the Lumians couldn't match their production capability. That's when reports began reaching Xi's command center about a new species entering the galactic stage. Human vessels had been spotted on the fringes of known space, and their capabilities were unlike anything either the Lumians or Draxians had encountered. Initial observations showed that humans were physically unremarkable, no natural armor, no enhanced senses, no ability to alter their cellular structure. But they possessed something that even the adaptable Lumians found fascinating, an almost irrational determination to overcome any obstacle, no matter the odds. Supreme Commander, she commissioned a detailed study of human history, and what she found both terrified and excited her. This species had nearly destroyed itself multiple times but had always emerged stronger. They had faced extinction-level events and turned them into opportunities for advancement. Most importantly, they approached problems with a creativity that bordered on madness. "We need to make contact," she announced to her war council. "The humans don't think like us or the Draxians. They don't accept the traditional limitations of warfare. They could be the catalyst we need to change the entire dynamic of this conflict." But before the Lumians could establish formal contact, the Draxian Empire made its move. A massive fleet was assembled for an assault on the human colony world of Terra Nova. Emperor Draxus, frustrated by the Lumian resistance, had decided to make an example of this emerging species. What no one predicted was that this decision would set in motion events that would reshape the power structure of the entire galaxy. The humans, with their strange blend of desperation and innovation, were about to demonstrate why it was a mistake to underestimate them. As Supreme Commander, she watched the Draxian fleet approach human space. She felt a sensation she hadn't experienced in centuries: hope. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered or allied with. They represented something entirely new, a force that could break the cycle of empires that had dominated galactic history for millennia. The stage was set for a confrontation that would prove that sometimes the greatest power comes not from superior technology or numbers, but from the sheer determination to resist against all odds. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had survived every catastrophe its harsh homeworld had thrown at it, and why they would rather die fighting than submit to tyranny. The human factor. President Amelia Stargazer stood at the viewport of Terra Nova's orbital defense station, watching the first light of dawn creep across the surface of humanity's most prosperous colony world. The reports from the outer sensor arrays were troubling. A massive fleet of unknown origin was approaching, and their intentions were clearly not peaceful. Madam President, her military advisor, General Marcus Chen, approached with a grim expression. The Draxian fleet will be within strike range in less than 48 hours. Our deep space reconnaissance shows they've committed nearly a third of their total forces to this attack. Stargazer didn't immediately respond. Her mind was racing through the lessons of history, remembering how humanity had survived countless threats on Earth before reaching the stars. They expect us to either surrender immediately or attempt to evacuate, she said finally. They don't know us at all. The history of human space colonization was relatively brief compared to other species, but it had been marked by constant innovation driven by necessity. When traditional fusion drives proved too slow for practical colonization, humans developed the controversial Armstrong drive, which created temporary wormholes by literally punching holes in spacetime. When solar radiation threatened early colonies, they didn't just build shields, they developed technology to harvest and redirect that energy. Begin Operation Lazarus, Stargazer commanded. It was a contingency plan that many had considered too extreme to ever implement, but humanity had learned long ago that survival sometimes required embracing the impossible. Across Terra Nova, massive underground factories that had been hidden since the colony's founding roared to life. These facilities weren't producing conventional weapons. Humanity had known they couldn't match the industrial capacity of established galactic powers. Instead, they had spent decades preparing for a different kind of war. The first line of defense emerged from hidden silos beneath the planet's polar ice caps. Thousands of autonomous drones, each smaller than a fighter craft but powered by experimental quantum cores, took up formation around the planet. These weren't designed to win battles through superior firepower, but to serve as a massive distributed sensor network that could adapt and learn from enemy tactics in real time. The Nexus AI is online, reported Dr. Sarah O'Connor, head of the Defense Project. It's already analyzing the Draxian fleet composition and developing countermeasures. The Nexus was humanity's secret weapon, not a traditional artificial intelligence, but a hybrid system that linked human consciousness directly with quantum computing networks. It was technology that both the Draxians and Lumians would consider abhorrent, a blurring of the line between organic and artificial intelligence that violated fundamental taboos. But humans had never been particularly concerned with what others considered taboo. When the first Draxian scouts entered the system, they encountered defenses unlike. The battle for Terra Nova. The void above Terra Nova erupted in a display of destructive power that would be visible across half the galaxy. The Draxian fleet, led by Admiral Thexus himself, emerged from hyperspace in perfect battle formation, a testament to centuries of military doctrine. But what they found waiting for them defied all strategic logic. Instead of a conventional planetary defense force, they faced a swarm of millions of tiny autonomous units that moved with an intelligence that seemed almost organic. The Nexus AI, interfaced directly with human operators in secure bunkers beneath Terra Nova's surface, coordinated the defense with inhuman precision. "This is impossible," Thexus muttered as he watched his first wave of destroyers being systematically dismantled. The human drones weren't trying to destroy his ships, they were transforming them. Microscopic machines, released in clouds by the defensive swarm, were literally consuming the Draxian vessels from the inside out, converting them into raw materials for more defensive units. In the command bunker, Dr. Sarah O'Connor monitored the neural feedback from the Nexus operators. The human pilots, connected directly to the quantum network, were experiencing the battle on a level that transcended normal consciousness. They weren't just controlling the swarm, they were the swarm, each drone an extension of human will enhanced by artificial intelligence. "Second wave incoming," announced General Chen, his holographic image flickering in the command center. "They're adapting their tactics, using electromagnetic pulses to try to disrupt our control systems." But humanity had learned long ago never to rely on a single approach. As the EMPs washed over the defensive swarm, a new type of drone emerged from Terra Nova's atmosphere. These units, powered by biological computers grown from modified human neural tissue, were immune to electromagnetic interference. They carried an even more insidious weapon, engineered viruses that could penetrate Draxian environmental suits and rewrite the DNA of their crews. The battle for Terra Nova became a testing ground for every theoretical weapon and defense system humanity had developed in secret. Quantum entanglement mines created localized pockets of chaos in spacetime, trapping entire squadrons of Draxian ships in temporal loops. Psychic amplifiers, powered by the combined mental energy of thousands of networked human minds, projected fear and confusion directly into the minds of enemy crews. President Stargazer, watching from the reinforced command center, felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Humanity had prepared for this moment not just through technology, but through a fundamental change in how they approached warfare. They had abandoned the concept of honorable combat in favor of absolute survival. "They're pulling back," reported General Chen, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "The first wave has lost nearly 60% of their capital ships, and the rest are showing signs of severe systems degradation." But Admiral Thexus was not ready to admit defeat. The pride of the Draxian Empire had never retreated from battle, and he had no intention of being the first to do so. With grim determination, he ordered his remaining ships to form up for a final, devastating assault. "Energy readings are off the scale," warned Dr. O'Connor. "They're charging their main planet-killer weapons. If those hit the surface..." President Stargazer's response was immediate. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Authorization Stargazer Alpha 1. Throughout Terra Nova cities, hidden transmitters activated, broadcasting a signal that would have seemed like nonsense to any other species. But to the millions of human colonists who had chosen to undergo genetic modification, it was a call to action. Their bodies, enhanced with synthetic DNA and quantum-linked neural implants, began to change. The Draxian sensors detected a massive energy surge from the planet's surface, but by then it was too late. Every human on Terra Nova had become part of a vast, living weapon. Their combined consciousness, amplified by the Nexus AI and focused through specially designed quantum arrays, reached out across space. What happened next would be debated by military historians for centuries. The Draxian fleet, in the midst of charging their most powerful weapons, simply stopped. Every system, from the smallest life support unit to the massive engine cores, simultaneously failed. But it wasn't a conventional system failure. The very laws of physics seemed to stop working within the space occupied by their ships. Admiral Thexus, watching his mighty fleet become effectively frozen in space, finally understood what the Lumians had tried to warn the Empire about. Humans weren't just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely new, a race that had turned their greatest weakness, their fragility and short lifespans, into their greatest strength. Through countless near-extinction events on their homeworld, through plagues and wars and natural disasters, humans had developed not just the technology but the mindset needed to survive anything. They had embraced change at the deepest level, altering their own bodies and minds to adapt to any challenge. As the battle drew to its inevitable conclusion, President Stargazer prepared to address not just her people, but the entire galaxy. The defense of Terra Nova would send a message that would echo across civilized space: humanity would not bow to tyranny, no matter the cost. The Draxian Empire had finally met its match, not in terms of size or conventional military power, but in sheer, unstoppable determination. The humans had turned their entire colony into a weapon, their population into a unified defense system, and their consciousness into a force that could alter reality itself. In the aftermath of the battle, as rescue ships began recovering the surviving Draxian crews, Admiral Thexus requested a direct communication with President Stargazer. His message was brief but profound: "We came expecting to find barbarians. Instead, we found the future." The Battle of Terra Nova would mark the beginning of a new era in galactic history. The Age of Empires was ending, replaced by something far more interesting, a time when adaptation and innovation would matter more than raw power. Humanity had not just defended their world, they had changed the rules of warfare itself. And in the shadows, watching with keen interest, the Lumians began to understand that their long game of resistance had finally found its missing piece. The humans, with their bizarre blend of desperation and genius, would be the catalyst for change they had been waiting for. A new dawn. The aftermath of the Battle of Terra Nova sent shockwaves through the galaxy. In the Grand Throne Room of Draxos Prime, Emperor Draxus the Bold faced a reality that none of his predecessors had ever encountered: the possibility of defeat. The holographic recordings of the battle played on endless loop before the War Council, each viewing revealing new aspects of humanity's devastating defense. "They turned their entire population into a weapon," marveled one of the senior strategists. "Not just their technology or their ships, but their very consciousness." In the secure chambers beneath Terra Nova's surface, President Amelia Stargazer was hosting an unprecedented gathering. Supreme Commander Lyra She of the Lumian Resistance had arrived in person, her form shifting subtly to adjust to Earth-normal gravity. Representatives from a dozen supposedly conquered species sat around a circular table, each drawn by the news of humanity's successful defense. "What you achieved here wasn't just a military victory," she said, her multifaceted eyes studying the human leader. "You've shown the galaxy that adaptation isn't just about survival, it's about transformation." The Nexus AI, still processing data from the battle, projected a real-time map of power shifts occurring throughout known space. The Draxian Empire's seemingly unshakable grip on its conquered territories was weakening. Reports were coming in of entire systems declaring independence, inspired by humanity's resistance. But President Stargazer understood that winning a battle wasn't the same as winning a war. "The Empire won't accept this challenge to their authority," she addressed the gathered delegates. "They'll return with everything they have. We need to be ready not just to defend, but to take the fight to them." This was where the Lumian expertise in asymmetric warfare merged perfectly with human innovation. While the Lumians had perfected the art of guerrilla tactics and stealth technology, humans had developed ways to fundamentally alter the rules of engagement. Together, they began planning something unprecedented, a campaign that would transform the galaxy's power structure itself. Deep in the quantum laboratories beneath Terra Nova, Dr. O'Connor worked alongside Lumian scientists to combine their technologies. The result was something entirely new, a hybrid system that merged Lumian quantum entanglement capabilities with human neural interface technology. This would allow resistance forces to coordinate across vast distances instantly, sharing not just information but consciousness itself. The warriors of Ura Major, represented by their battle-scarred general, offered their expertise in combat training. The Centauri scholars provided access to ancient technologies they had hidden from the Empire. The Andromedans revealed secret shipyards where a new kind of fleet could be constructed. But the most significant contribution came from an unexpected source. The modified humans who had participated in the defense of Terra Nova had discovered something extraordinary: their combined consciousness, amplified by the Nexus AI, could influence reality at a quantum level. They weren't just interfacing with technology, they were learning to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. "We're not just fighting an empire," President Stargazer explained to the coalition. "We're fighting an idea, the idea that power comes from dominance rather than adaptation. The Draxians believe in conquest through force. We'll show them that true strength comes from embracing change." The coalition's first move was subtle but devastating. Using combined Lumian-human technology, they began establishing quantum communication networks throughout Draxian space. These networks couldn't be detected or interrupted because they existed partially outside normal spacetime. Through them, resistance movements on conquered worlds could coordinate their actions perfectly. Emperor Draxus, sensing the growing threat, launched a massive military campaign to crush the rebellion before it could spread. But he was fighting a different kind of war now. His fleets would arrive at suspected resistance strongholds only to find empty space. Meanwhile, critical Imperial facilities would mysteriously cease functioning, their quantum structures reorganized at a fundamental level by human consciousness working through Lumian technology. The Empire's rigid command structure, once its greatest strength, became its greatest weakness. While Draxian commanders waited for orders through proper channels, resistance forces could adapt and react instantly through their quantum neural network. The Empire's mighty warships found themselves outmaneuvered not just in physical space, but in dimensions they couldn't even perceive. The turning point came during the Battle of the Helix Nebula. The Empire had committed its remaining forces to a massive offensive, determined to crush the resistance once and for all. They expected to face a combined fleet of human and Lumian ships. Instead, they encountered something unprecedented. The resistance forces, led by President Stargazer and Supreme Commander Shi, had transformed the nebula itself into a weapon. The quantum neural network, now spanning hundreds of light-years, allowed them to control the very fabric of spacetime. The mighty Draxian fleet found itself fighting not ships or soldiers, but reality itself. As his empire crumbled around him, Emperor Draxus finally understood what his father had tried to teach him before his death. True power wasn't about controlling others through force, it was about having the wisdom to adapt and change. In a final act that would be remembered for generations, he opened communication channels with the resistance. The peace negotiations that followed weren't about surrender or victory. They were about transformation. The Draxian Empire would not be destroyed but reformed, its strength turned toward exploration and discovery rather than conquest. Humanity and the Lumians would share their technologies not as weapons, but as tools for growth and understanding. President Stargazer's final address to the coalition became known as the Speech of Unity. Today marks not the end of an empire, but the beginning of something greater. We've proven that the strongest force in the universe isn't weapons or fleets or armies, it's the ability to adapt, to change, to become something new. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders we can't yet imagine. Let's explore it not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals, each bringing our unique strengths to face whatever challenges await us. The day humanity chose resistance over defeat became more than just a turning point in galactic history. It became a symbol of a fundamental truth, that true strength lies not in the power to destroy or dominate, but in the courage to change and grow. The galaxy entered a new age, one where diversity and adaptation were recognized as the keys to survival and progress. And in the quantum networks that now spanned known space, human and alien consciousness flowed together, creating something entirely new, a civilization that could face any challenge, adapt to any threat, and transform itself to meet any future that awaited. The age of empires had ended. The age of evolution had begun.